Hello, friends. Hello, friends.
A tradition unlike any other.
Oh my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Welcome back. Great to have you with us once again. Joining me from across the other side of the country is not Kieran Marsh, but with an equally as impressive setup for a podcast. Blake Collyer, mate, welcome to the 19th Tee. Very excited to have you with us. Obviously a golfer, but also you were just telling me you host a golf podcast of your own. Is it? Oh, you didn't tell me if it was a golf podcast. Is it a golf podcast?
No, it's not golf related, but
okay.
It's
What's the podcast? Give it a plug.
Oh, it's called Never Too Late with Blake. So it's a bit of a health sort of podcast, and in that space of wellness and health that I sort of got into during the COVID lockdown. So I thought I wanted to give that a go and spread a bit of the information that I'd been learning and reading about. So yeah, it's been going quite well. I think I've put out about 5 or 6 episodes so far, and I haven't put any out for a few months, but I'm looking to get back into it soon.
On Spotify and Apple and
yeah, it's on all of that. Yeah,
awesome.
So Spotify, Apple. So yeah, go check it out. I've got an Instagram page as well, so
there you go.
Check it out there as well. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, anytime, mate. We really appreciate you joining us in the midst of, I guess, the 2022 PGA Australian PGA season. I guess it's got such a long name, but mate, how's the season been? You've played some really nice golf as of 2022. I mean, you have throughout your career, but you've had some good finishes. TPS Victoria finishing 4th, T9 at Murray River. Like it's been a good 2022 for you so far.
Yeah, so far it has. I mean, it took me a little bit of time to get back into it after the time off golf through the lockdowns. And then really the more and more I've played and the more events that have come on, I've started to, I guess, get more comfortable out there and really piece together some good results. So as you mentioned before, the 4th and the 9th. And yeah, I mean, it's been going quite well, and working my way up on the order of merit on the tour. So, and yeah, it's going well.
Has there been some noticeable difference, I guess, in the past 2 years? It's something that we do want to explore with you. Obviously, it's been tough going for certainly a young professional like yourself, having joined the ranks, and you're obviously very early, I guess, for lack of a term, early in your golfing career. But where has there been something noticeable that's changed in the past 2 years that you've kind of come back after this break and really hit the ground running? I guess, has it been just a heap of practice? I guess obviously the mindfulness and the wellness side of things you've been working on as well.
Yeah, well, I think the thing was I turned pro in October 2019. So yeah, I played a few Australian tour events and then went to European tour school and Corn Ferry tour school at the time. And I got through the first stage of Europe and then Christmas, and then worked my way into the Aussie stuff, and got my Australian tour card. In March, I went to Thailand for the Asian tour final stage and just missed out on getting my full card there. So I've got some partial status there. And then a week after I got back, we went into lockdown. So up until, I guess, kind of November last year, I'd only played 10, 11 events as a pro in that 2-year period. So it was really difficult to kind of feel like I had any footing underneath me. And turning pro at that time in 2019, I felt like I was really ready to make that transition and then see where it would take me from there. And I had high hopes, and I was 23 at the time, and now 25. I feel like I'm starting now, sort of, now that there's events in a row I can play and build up through all that. But during that time, the last 2 years, I was living in Melbourne. We weren't able to go to the golf courses. So I was still doing a bit of work at an organic supermarket that I'd worked at from when I finished high school through to when I turned pro. And that was really good because it got me out of the house, and I was able to, work 5 or 6 days a week and keep myself busy. And then, I just started listening to podcasts and reading, and a bit of guidance from Dean Kinney, who is now the coach of the Victorian golf program. He came down from New South Wales, I think it was 2019, and just planted a few seeds went through my own research, and it's just put a lot of things in perspective. And coming back to the tournaments now, it's more about just getting out there, enjoying it, learning, and instead of putting pressure on the results, just trying to get better each day and letting those results sort of come and take care of themselves.
I mean, we definitely want to unpack this past 2 years with you, because we had Mike Clayton on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he actually singled you out as a player who has probably suffered the most in the past 2 years. As you mentioned, you turned pro on the eve of lockdown. You're, I guess, rapidly rising through this. You've got status in Asia. You're playing on Q schools in the US, in the Europe, as you mentioned. You've got status here, like things, for lack of a term, you've got the world at your feet. You can kind of do whatever you want, and then it just goes like that overnight. And I guess the frustration, as people would know listening to this podcast, is there's been no events for you guys to play here in Australia, so it has been super challenging for you. I guess, like, can you contextualize how stressful that kind of 2 years has been for you? Because, as you said, you're kind of starting your pro career 2 years later than you should have been starting it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like golfing wise, I'm still 22, 23, just coming out of the amateur stuff, just turning pro. When I think about it, I just turned 25, and I'm like, wow, like, I feel like I'm starting now. And when I turned pro, like, my first event was the Victorian PGA, and I asked for an invite and didn't get one that week. So I had to qualify into the tournament and shot a 61 in the qualifying to get in, and then had a 61 in the second round as well, and ended up with a fourth finish there. So I kind of felt like I made a transition there and was able to hopefully build on that. And it just wasn't the case. And the hardest thing was, I guess, sort of the start of 2020, we got a taste of some events, and that what we thought was going to go back to normal. And I was pumped about that and doing all I could. And then it just kind of got taken away again. And then that was the hardest part, was more the middle of last year and the end of last year, when it just felt like we were doing it all again, and that there was no sort of prospect of it ending. And that the first lockdown was, I felt like I had a lot of motivation. A lot of the guys in the Victorian program, we were doing sessions on Zoom and with our physio and coaches, and there was all that buzz about doing what you could at home. And then as it dragged on, it was a lot harder to keep myself accountable. I mean, there was times where I didn't, and times when I did, but when I knew that there were some tournaments coming up, that was really when I was like, all right, like, yeah, let's switch on and start doing what I could at home to, prepare for that. And it was more mentally and physically. Like, I was doing drills that I needed to do for my golf every day. And then adding in like meditation practices and some cold exposure in the shower and stuff around diet. And I learned a lot about cooking. So it was just things like that I wanted to improve on for myself, which is now carried on into my golf, which has been great.
I guess in that time, was there ever a period where you kind of thought, like, given that there were no events scheduled, there was nothing planned, I guess, was there ever a time where you were kind of like, I don't know if this is going to return to normality in Australia in the near future, where I can play golf at a young age? Like we said, you've lost two years out of your career. Was there ever a time where you were like, right, I might just have to go to Europe and try my best with status and get whatever status I can, or go to Asia? Like, did that ever enter your mind, or was it always just, let's just work towards what we can with, your coaches and whatnot over Zoom?
Yeah. So a few of the guys went over to the US last year to do some pay to play and some Monday qualifyings. And I had thought about that. And luckily Jeff Ogilvy's moved back to Melbourne, and I've been able to get quite close to him and get some really good advice off him. And we discussed me maybe going over there. And at the time, it just, like, financially didn't work out. We spoke about if I went over for 6 or 8 weeks, and the money that I would probably spend, and the prospect of not knowing when I might be able to come back with flights to Australia. And he said, you're in no rush, like, just sit on it, like, wait here for this little period, and next year we'll have a bit better idea on what it might look like. So that's what I decided to do, and I'm happy with that decision. Like I could have gone over and done all that, but I could have spent 2 months overseas and maybe not. I might have played 8 rounds of competitive golf, whereas I was able to stay at home, keep working and make some money. And Jeff started up some games where we all would catch up and play money matches together. So I was still getting in the competitive stuff when the golf courses did open. So yeah, I think I was happy with that decision. And then hopefully this year, after the Australian tour stuff finishes in April, I'll look to head overseas to do maybe some of that stuff, and then tour schools at the end of the year. So
how much, I'll come back to Jeff Ogilvy in a minute because it sounds like he's been a great mentor to you, but how much did your game suffer in that time where you couldn't go to golf courses? I mean, it's great that, everyone can putt inside, everyone can have a net outside. It's not the same though. Like, if you can still feel like you hit a good one into a driving net, but chances are that, it's come out completely wrong for most amateurs out there. So how difficult was that? And then when you did get back to the course, was there a noticeable difference at all, or was it pretty much where you left it?
Yeah, well, the thing was, I think it was like October 2019. My family, we moved into an apartment, so I didn't have a net or anything to kind of use for that period. Yeah, but in a way, I almost thought it was a good thing, because I've said this to a few people close to me, is like during school, I was playing footy, basketball, golf, and primary school all the way through. And then as soon as I finished high school, it was straight into the Victorian Institute of Sport in the golf program. That was 3 days a week, and golf all around that. And I'd never had a chance to stop at all. So it was actually quite a good time to kind of stop in that regard. But then without having a net, I was able to work on the drills more inside and more feel based, rather than, I feel like if I had a net, I probably would be videoing my swing and trying to get it to look a certain way, rather than like how my body could be moving. So I think it was a good thing. It was a little bit difficult. It was a bit rusty each time I came back. Gosh, it felt very strange. I'd never had any time off for that length of time. So it was a little bit rusty, but after a few weeks, it wasn't too bad. Back on track. No
damage to the apartment. No broken windows or anything.
I did have a little incident. I had a plastic sort of piping with a light on one end, and I was swinging it, and mum and dad were like, God, don't swing it any faster than that. And I did one of it, and the light flew out the end and hit the roof, and that was the end of that. So there was no more of that after that. Yeah.
Well, it must be said, I mean, your swing looks great at the moment. I mean, I was just going through your Instagram, like your ball striking has been fantastic, particularly this year. But I mean, it's clearly something that you've worked on. Doing those drills is clearly translating now to the golf course, and you seem to be striking the ball really well. Overall, your game seems in a great place, but that iron play just seems to be a real strength of your game at the moment, particularly what we've seen on some tricky courses throughout 22 anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been a strength of mine for a few years now. And even since, I guess COVID, and then once when Dean Kinney came down to Victoria, it was a bit of a shift for me from a bit of like working on technique on the range, on the short game area, to more getting out on the golf course and learning how to score. So learning how to score with what you've got. So now when I get the chance, I'm going to go play 9 holes. I'm going to go play 18 holes, rather than I'm going to go spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on the range. And that's helped me personally massively. I see it now in tournaments, like in the lead up to an event, I'll play 18 on a Monday, Tuesday, and then 9 holes on a Wednesday in practice rounds. And then, get out there. So then I'm more in a scoring sort of focus and working on that. But I mean, my ball striking has been good, and I think those drills during the lockdowns have definitely helped. But it's always been sort of a strength of mine, and I just enjoy keep building on that and sharpening that. And definitely playing on courses helped that a lot, just to learn to adapt to different conditions. And when you're on the golf course, each shot's one of one, whereas on the range or on the chipping green, you just pull another golf ball and try it again. So your muscle memory works a bit better when it's one of one. So it's helped a lot.
It is. It's fascinating because I came to the realization that my game was in such a bad place like a month ago, and I was like, it cannot be this bad. Like, my handicap's gone out from 18 to 21, and I'm like, this is just going in the wrong direction. It's not right. And I love the game. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to actually put my head down and practice. And, you go, and it's exactly right. You duff a chip and you're like, oh, whatever. Like, I just hit the next one, and then you hit it well and whatever. But then the thing that I found really difficult was when you go to the range, and I'm really trying to work on some things that my coach is trying to instill into me. And that's great. But then you go and play 9 holes and you just get back into all the old bad habits that you've always done. Like, it was interesting where you raised it just before, that you weren't worried about having the prettiest swing, or you weren't worried about having the perfect swing. And I think so many amateurs particularly grow up in that, or watching Scotty, like he's probably the ideal swing, or Louis, or whoever it might be. Like, it's fascinating. It's a really interesting complex to think that it's like, I sit behind a desk all day. Like, there's no way that my body's going to be able to go out and move like Adam Scott, who's been playing golf for 30 something years. Like, it's a weird paradox in your head, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, we've all been through that, like coming through the amateur stuff. It's all about sort of your swing, how it looks, and you want to keep improving that. And I still, like, I go through patches where I video my swing a bit, and that's when I guess sometimes you can go down a bit of a spiral, and because you want it to look a certain way rather than perform a certain way. And then when I go through months without even videoing it, that's probably when I play my best. And I think even Adam Scott has said that before, when he's played his best when his coaches just videoed it and he hasn't looked at it, and it's just more ball flight and feel based. So I think that's definitely helped more when I've turned professional. It's less about the technique and how everything sort of looks, and more about how it performs. And I mean, the look is a bonus if it looks good, or looks like Adam Scott's swing, or Louis Oosthuizen's swing. So I think it's more performance based rather than how it looks, but it can be difficult.
I always say I don't really give a shit how the ball gets in the hole, as long as it gets in the hole in the least amount of shots. I don't care if I don't know, if I top a ball or whatever and it goes straight, like, I'm okay with that. If it's going 100 yards offline, different story. As long as the ball's going straight and in the right direction, I'm okay with it. So no, it's an interesting one, particularly for amateurs anyway. I think, amateurs get very hard on themselves, and they always, myself included, go out and you play 18 holes and you're like, today's going to be the day that I'm going to break par. It's like, you've never broken 80. Like, settle down. we're not breaking par today, but take us.
Even when I'm back at Metropolitan, my home club, I play with the same group of guys on a Sunday morning, and a few of them are off 18, 20 handicaps, and I'll be like, they'll be next to the green for 2, and I'll be like, they want to play the hero shot, like flop it over the bunker. And I'm like, chip it to the front of the green, 2-putt, get your 5 and go to the next. And they're starting to get that concept of, oh yeah, I don't need to go for the hero shot. I can just build up my score over the 18 holes, and I'll end up being around the mark at the end anyway. So,
100%. I'm taking religiously now any sort of chip under, or with 20 to 25 meters or less, 8-iron. I've put the 54-degree wedge back in the bag. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, I don't generate enough spin. I'm not good enough to get it close to the hole. So play the percentage play, and it seems to be working. So anyway,
absolutely, that's
good mental game. Take us back to the very beginning, Blake. I mean, we've been going about 20 minutes now, and this is becoming a theme with the interviews that I do without Marsh here, as we get sidetracked from the very first question that we normally throw to our guests, and that's, where did golf begin for you? What's your first sort of recollections of the sport, and how did it all begin for Blake Collyer?
Yeah, well, Mum and Dad have got some videos of me at home with some plastic clubs hitting down the hallway, but that was more just one of those things as a young kid doing that. But then at the age of about 10 or 11, I had a best mate at primary school, and we played footy, cricket, tennis, basketball. We played everything together, and his dad played golf. And so he wanted his son to do some junior lessons. So I just tagged along with him, and we did that. And then I don't know, it was around that sort of time, maybe a few years later, he fell off the monkey bars at school and broke both of his wrists at the same time. And then obviously he couldn't do the golf lessons, and I kept going with them. And as the years progressed, I wanted to play footy or basketball, and I did a lot of that. And even leading into years 10, 11, 12, I was playing basketball for the school and representative and domestic. So that was a 6 or 7 day a week thing. And I just kept the golf up on the background because I enjoyed the side of it, that I would go after school and play 9 holes, and it was kind of calming, and I was improving, and it was what I put in, I got out of it. And that was what I really liked about it. And then I think it was more like I got in a few under 14 and under 16 development camps with the Victorian sort of squad. And then, I saw like a really good opportunity, and my golf started to improve, and then making I made a junior state team, I think a few junior state teams. And then, from there, I just, I love it. From comparing it to a team sport and an individual sport, I like that what I put in, I get out of it. The team sport was always a bit difficult when other players, you've got to be accountable for, I guess, what they're doing or not doing. So with golf, it's, I think I like that side of it, that I can put in the work and I'll get the rewards from that. So through kind of high school, I was, played in the state teams, and then got into some men's state teams, and represented Australia in a Junior Pacific Cup against the US. And I think that was kind of year 11 and 12. I did that twice, once over here and once over there. And then I had some opportunities to go to college in the US or get in the Victorian Institute of Sport. And at the time, I managed to get in the Victorian Institute of Sport. So I was really happy with that. And as soon as I finished year 12, I went, straight into that, and was in there for 4 or 5 years. And now I'm here. But there's a lot in between. But that's a rough sort of.
You must have showcased some element of talent quite early on, because I mean, it sounds stupid to say, but 10 is probably later in the piece than, a few guys that we've had on this podcast. They pick it up with their 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. They get handicaps at the age of 7, and it's like 10's a little bit later. You're playing footy, you're playing basketball. Like, you must have had some element of talent and skill within the game of golf for you to keep progressing and wanting to keep progress, because it can be as we were just talking about, it can be a very tough game at times, particularly for a 10, 11, 12-year-old, if you're not picking it up with, the skills that come with the game. Yeah,
and I think playing those other sports helped, because, I don't know, just as a kid, you want to beat your mates, and playing those other sports gave me a bit of, a bit of more awareness of my body and how to hit the golf club. And that was, I mean, even back then, the way I hit the ball compared to the other kids was, like, I guess, my advantage then. And I carried that through. But I think playing all those sports helped. And then as I got older, it just built on that. I grew up playing at Kew Golf Club and would play there every Saturday with the same group of guys that were my age, and we just would see who'd get the lowest handicap, and we just kept that up. And I loved it. And that was the best thing, was that I got into it because I loved playing it. And then there was no push or anything from my parents. It's all support. Like, they don't play golf or anything, and neither does my sister. So it was just like, they would take me to basketball, they'd take me to whichever sport I wanted to do, and then just support me with that. And then I ended up with golf. So, and they still, obviously support me fully with that.
So you're playing golf, obviously that's taken up a fair chunk of your time. You're playing representative basketball, which you said was a 6-day-a-week commitment. You're playing footy at the same time. What sort of report cards are you bringing home at that point in time, Blake? Is it Blake Collyer is?
I was doing enough to pass and everything. But I think about it now. We had, even at school, we had a compulsory Saturday sport. So I did water polo as well. And I just loved being active and playing sport and competing, no matter what it is. And looking back now, like, I feel like if I was in year 12 now, that's when I'd be ready to study, like, and knuckle down with that sort of stuff. But at the time, it was all sport. And I wish I could kind of have done both at the same time, but no, I'm definitely happy with the sports side of things.
You mentioned a minute ago there you had some college opportunities come up. I mean, I don't know if you're willing to share who they came from, but it's always fascinating. I mean, there's so many different paths to being a professional golfer now, and we talk to guys who have gone to college and they've absolutely loved it. It gives them a taste of playing against some of the best young golfers in the world. People who go through institutes of sport, as you did, turn pro straight away. There's so many different paths. I mean, how did you make that decision to, I guess, stay stay in Victoria and go to the VIS as opposed to going to college over in the States?
Yeah, I think at the time I was still, I guess my coach Marty Joyce at the time was the head coach at the VIS, and there was a lot of good amateurs at the time and guys that just turned pro in the VIS, like Todd Sinnott, Nathan Holman, even like Lucas Herbert was in it, and Ben Eccles. There's a lot of guys that were in it, and girls as well. Joe Charlton was a pro at the time, and just the competitive environment of the training I thought would be really good, and with the benefit of being able to stay at home. At the time, I don't know how I would have going overseas on my own at that stage, and staying over there for a long period. So I think that was more part of the decision, and also the fact that in the VIS we were able to travel in the Australian winter. We went over to the UK for their summer, and the US, and played tournaments over there. So I was still getting a taste of that international competition at an amateur level against the best guys. We play in the British Amateur and St Andrews Links Trophy and Scottish Amateur in the UK, and then go to the US and play the highest events there. And one of the years I qualified for the US Amateur. So I think I was able to get a taste of all of that competition and then some of the best coaching in, I would say, probably the world at the time, through the Victorian Institute of Sport. So I got kind of the best of both, I feel.
Your amateur career, which you just mentioned there, you had some really good results. I'm just reading back here. 5th in the British Amateur Championship stroke play, 2nd in the Riversdale Cup. You twice won the Dunes medal, and you won the W.E. Cole Cotton States Invitation. That is a mouthful in the US. But you had a very good amateur career, I guess. You got some trophies in the bank there. It must have given you a lot of confidence to, I guess, turn pro, which we'll get to in a minute. But, playing overseas and particularly playing in Europe is very different to playing here in Australia, I guess. How did that transition go? How did your game transition to playing in Europe and those links courses, which you touched on, and then ultimately traveling to America as well, which is probably a little more aligned to the courses that we have here?
Yeah, I think the benefit of, I guess, growing up on the sandbelt is kind of that you get it's like windy 6 out of 7 days. It's windy all the time there, and then you get the firm conditions. So it's almost like you get a bit of the UK sort of link style conditions with the firmness, and then with the US you've got to know what number to land your golf ball with an iron shot coming in. So I think I was able to kind of get the best of both with that, but it was definitely difficult. Like you go from playing amateur events in Australia and kind of being the bigger fish, or like knowing everyone who's playing, and then you go over there and you've heard a few names, but you don't really know anyone. You don't really know where you sit and everything. So you almost go out. Well, I felt like I almost went out there with less expectation because I didn't know, like, you don't know anyone. You're just like, oh, I'll just go and do my best and see where that kind of sits. So, and then as the years went on, you put a bit more pressure on yourself because you're like, oh, I've done this trip twice now, and I want to start competing a bit more and playing well. So, but the more, I think that definitely helped a lot, like being able to play links courses and then go to the US and play like thick rough courses and where you've got to land the ball right next to the flag, and just trying to adapt to all different conditions. It was really good.
That 5th at the British Amateur Championship in the stroke play, that must have been something quite special to finish that high in such a prestigious event, I guess. And maybe just run us through that and I guess the confidence that ultimately that gave your game.
Yeah, well, I think at the time it was at Royal Aberdeen Golf Club, and it was so windy. I think I finished even or 1 under par, like around that mark for a 5th place. So it was really tough. And at the time, I even now, like when the conditions get tough, I tend to sort of enjoy that, lick my lips a bit, because my ball striking kind of comes through and it separates the field a little bit. So that's more what my mindset was at that tournament, was just keep making pars and then a few birdies will come and just eliminate the bogey. So it's less about trying to make a score and then just building it up over the 18 holes. And that finish, it gave me a lot of confidence that I could compete at that level with some of the best amateurs at the time. And then I think that sort of translated into, I qualified for the US Amateur. It might have been a year or two after that. And that was at Riviera in 2017, maybe, I think. And I managed to scrape into the top 64, the match play, with an eagle birdie finish, and then came up against Colin Morikawa in the match play, first round of the match play. And
Right.
I told this story a few times. I just saw my tee time of, I think it was 8:15 the next morning, and I was going to go to bed, and I was staying with a mate from Sydney, and he's come running into my room and he's like, "Oh, you're playing Colin. He's number 3 amateur in the world. He's done X, Y, Z." And I was like, "Oh God," like it just rattled me. And I got there the next day and there was cameras and people everywhere. And I would have just turned up and just played him, like I said before, like having not known who he was. But I was kind of rattled the first few holes, and he beat me quite easily. But either way, it was a really good experience. And even there competing at that level, I know that I can do that. It's just finding out my path there to get out there.
This is meant with the greatest respect, but does it feel okay to be beaten by a 2-time major champion?
Yeah,
in match play? I mean, we're talking about ball striking. He's the best iron player that we've had since Tiger, I think, in my opinion, anyway. But like, is that okay? Like now, a few years down the track, you're now at the time it sucked, but like, I'm sure now you're kind of like, it's okay, sort of.
Yeah, at the time it was a bit different, but now it's like, oh, it's okay. But even then, his ball striking was so good. He just hit the same little fade every time, and just wore me down, I guess. And you can see why he's such a good player now and doing such great things. So.
Let's talk to me about your decision to turn pro. Obviously, as we sort of touched on at the top, October of 2019, you were not to know what the world was going to look like some 3 months later. But who did you consult? Take us through. Was that always part of the timeline? Was it sort of set that this is when you wanted to turn pro? Were you waiting for amateur results? Talk to us about your decision and who you consulted.
Yeah, so it had a little bit to do with the amateur results. I mean, that year, in the winter of that year, I went overseas, and that was my 4th trip over to play the amateur stuff over amateur tournaments over there. And I think that, or the year before, I won the tournament in the US, and it was sort of building towards that. And I was at a point where I think my amateur ranking just got inside the world amateur ranking, just got inside the top 50 in the world. And at the time, I wasn't in a position to get into the top 10 in the amateur world ranking, where that can open a few doors. So I felt like I consulted my coach and like mentor and now manager, and just spoke about, and family as well, and just spoke about what it kind of looked like and if I was ready to make that transition. And it all kind of looked like it was pointing in the right direction to get out there and give it a go. And I think one of the things that's been good about turning pro is that it's all sort of on me in terms of I'm running my own sort of like business, I guess. Whereas as an amateur, it's more, I don't know, it just doesn't have, it's like I've kind of gone into this and I can take that professionalism that I always felt like I had, but now really like own it. And I feel like I've person by pro and kind of owning my stuff. I think that was more just consulting the people around me that had been supporting me and been around for the 5-6 years before that. And we were all happy with that decision and the transition to turn pro.
Remiss of me not to circle back to the WE Cole Cotton States invitation, the tournament that you mentioned that you won just there in the US. So we'll go back a step here. talk to me about that win. Tell me what that sort of meant to you, I guess, to go over to the US, where I guess it's the pinnacle of golf. Anywhere the PGA Tour is over there, Corn Ferry's over there. It's all golf is in the US. So, what was it like to go over to the States? I guess, as you mentioned before, you're a big fish, and then you've gone overseas to play, and things are a little bit bigger and better. Like, what was it like to go over and win? And I guess it must just do you confidence. Like, you can't even put it into words, I'm sure, going over and winning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd competed well in a few events in previous years. I think one of my first events in the US, I came fourth at a tournament at the Olympic Club in San Francisco, and I knew I could compete over there. And then that event, the Cole Cotton States, was in Louisiana, and there was I think I played it 2 years previous to that. And when I first went over to the US for those tournaments, I didn't have the world ranking that some of the other Victorians and Australians had, so I couldn't get into some of the bigger tournaments. So I went to some events on my own just because I wanted to keep competing while I was over there. And that was one of them at the time. And then I met a really nice family that I stayed with. And 2 years later, we had a week where a mate and I didn't have an event. So we went and played it. And I mean, he won the stroke. It was a 2-round stroke play into match play, and he won the stroke play. And we both qualified for the match play and went quite deep. And then, yeah, I mean, in the final, it was pretty surreal that it ended the way it did, and I was able to win. I think I was like 2 up with 4 holes to go, and had a hole in one on the 16th hole to go, or the 15th hole, sorry, to go 3 up with 3 to go. So, and just knowing that I could compete at that level overseas gave me the confidence and more a bit of self-belief that, yeah, my game's good enough, and I can keep building on it to, really compete at any level.
So hole in one, did you say like walk off hole in one ultimately? Is that, did you say that was the score would have worked, right? Or do you still have another hole to play?
We had to play one more hole. Yeah. Yeah, it would have been good if it was just the last. But
yeah, absolutely. It would have. That would have been certainly nice. Speaking of playing well and putting together nice rounds, so you turned pro in October of 19, and then, as you mentioned, you you weren't allowed into the Vic PGA, I guess. So you went and qualified by shooting a 10 under 61, just as a bit of fun, I guess. What happened in that round? I know that you then backed it up and did it in competition 2 rounds later as well on day 2. So all clicked together one of those days, I guess. Was it where athletes say that they were in the zone, I guess, ultimately?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd actually had a 61 in a tournament in Victoria. I don't know, it might have been a few years before that. And when I sort of have those low rounds, it just feels like I don't really know what score I am. I know I'm really under par, but I'm not keeping track of what I am. I'm so in the zone, like just playing every shot as it comes and reading the putt and then hitting it where it is and it's going in. And then at the end, it's sort of, oh, wow, it was 10, or like it could have been 8. Like, I didn't really know. I just knew I was really low, and the round goes really quickly. And yeah, every shot you're so into every shot, and you're not thinking about the result. You're just like, I want to hit a high draw 7-9 here. And then you just go, this is what I want to do to hit that shot. And then and at the time, everything's sort of coming together, and it feels really good. And it's hard to tap into that often, but when it happens, it's really good.
And I guess then going out and doing it in competition, I don't know. Can you separate the two rounds? Because I mean, ultimately you've got one to get into the tournament, but then you've got one in the tournament as well. Can you kind of separate them? Was one better than the other?
Not really. I don't know. The hard thing was that I guess I thought I was going to get an invite into the event. So there was almost a bit of, well, I'm going to prove to you that I can play in this event. And that was sort of more on the Monday. And then the Tuesday, I wasn't really expecting. I was more just like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I'm playing in my first pro event. And then, I mean, the qualifying was on the same course as well. So it's kind of suited my eye down at Cape Shank. And I I just went from there and I couldn't really separate the two. I mean, the one in the tournament was probably, you could say, a little bit more difficult because it was under that tournament sort of pressure. But yeah, I mean, I've since been able to do similar sort of low rounds at Cobram. Was that 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago? I shot 8 under in the third round there, which was a course record. And that felt the same as those rounds. Like you're in the zone and hitting the shots you want and rolling in the putts and just, yeah, it all comes together for a low score. So.
It must be very nice, mate, because I wouldn't know what that wouldn't know what it's like. I guess I don't want to go too negative on this, but then that same tournament in the third round to then come out and not play particularly as well as you did clearly the day before, but by your standards, I'm sure you'd agree that it wasn't a great round. Like, how do you kind of put it all into perspective when you walk away at the end of the week? You finished outright fourth, I think. How do you walk away at the end of the week? You go, I had this fantastic 61. I followed it up with a pretty average round, first professional event. Do you kind of just go like, well, it was my first professional event, or are you hard on yourself? Like, how do you sort of put all that together in your own head?
Yeah, I mean, in that third round, the conditions took a big turn. Like it was extremely windy compared to the few days previous, and it was my first time, I guess, first time in a lead in a pro event, and it was pretty hard. But I guess the thing I kind of looked at in review was more that what I did to get myself in that position, rather than being too hard on myself, and then more working out, okay, if I get in that position again, what sort of tools and things can I use to try and do my best in that position again. And even like Cobram a few weeks ago, I was leading going into the last round and playing in the final group, and I hadn't been in a final group in a professional event before, and I felt really comfortable out there and just wasn't able to piece together the score that I needed on the day. And maybe there was a little bit of sense of trying too hard, but otherwise it was like it just didn't come together that day how I would have hoped. And it's just more playing, knowing that it will happen at some point. Like I will win an event at some point, and I'm just going to keep giving myself the chances rather than beating myself up going, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, like I'm not good enough. Like, yeah, it's more about building progressively over time and knowing that it will, I'll keep giving myself the chances, and one day it will come through. And I heard something really good Rory McIlroy was saying the other day. He said, I've played over 300 professional events and won 30 of them. So I've lost over 280 times, I think he said. So he's like, and that's a Hall of Fame career. So it just shows how difficult golf can be and getting that win can be. But if I can keep giving myself those chances and shooting those low rounds and learning each day from that, then I think I'll give myself good chances for the win.
What are your goals for 2022, I get, or the 21-22 wraparound season? What are your goals? I guess a win would obviously be up there, but maybe from you, what are you hoping to achieve this year?
Yeah, a win would be great, but another thing would be to try and get out on a main tour, whether it's Europe, US, Corn Ferry, and just keep giving myself chances. I know with the Order of Merit in Australia now, there's a few more opportunities with like top 3 getting a European Tour card, and there's certain things about getting into final stage of Corn Ferry Tour School if you finish in the top 5, and so it's just trying to build and do that and try and work my way up the Order of Merit, and whether it's this year or next year, and even at the end of the year going to some tour schools in Europe and just trying over there. And I just want to keep learning and growing with my game and myself as a person and each day. And that's kind of what my coach and I keep talking about. It's not about one fixed point in time with a certain event. It's more like they almost get in the way, I guess, as your development keeps progressing. And obviously I want to perform well every day I go out there. But yeah, it's more just that putting on the building blocks, and hopefully, this year it does lead to some good things, and hopefully getting on a main tour. And even in the last week, I found out I've got an invite into the Delhi Golf Club Open on the Asian Tour in 2 weeks, I think. So that'll be a good opportunity to test my game over there and see what I can do. on that sort of stage. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I was just looking here. We got 6 events left on the Aussie tour, I guess, aside from getting invites onto Asian tours. If you plan to play the rest of the Aussie season?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So, and they're all good opportunities to have strong finishes and just keep getting better under tournament conditions. And that's been the best thing, is that since turning pro, this has been my first patch of week in, week out events. I think after India, I would have played 9 out of the last 10 weeks. So, and that's what I want to do. Like, it's awesome being able to compete week in, week out, and test my game and keep trying to improve. So yeah, I haven't had that since, I guess, some amateur events when I was overseas in the US, when we played maybe 3 in a row. So it's been great to be able to bunch up some events, and yeah, I just want to keep competing and playing as much as I can.
Last question, and we'll leave you on a lighthearted one. What we generally do, Blake, and our research, we go through people's Instagram feeds, but you've been you're very clean cut, Blake. You've done a very good job of keeping all the funny stuff. I mean, it's very contrast to Lincoln Ty, who we had on last week as well. But one thing that did catch my eye here, under your sponsors, I'm assuming you got some great sponsors. Solitude Estate.
Yes.
Talk to me about Solitude Estate, because I don't think I've ever seen a professional golfer who is sponsored by a winery before.
Yeah, well, it's close. Like, my girlfriend's dad owns the vineyard in the Yarra Valley, and I wanted to help, like, support him and him support me. So it was kind of a mutual thing, and it's I had never really drunk too much wine before I met her, and then a few family dinners, I was like, oh, there's a glass there, I better have a drink. So, and now I quite enjoy it, but it's very good wine, and it's more a mutual sort of relationship there, and yeah, I'm proud to have them sponsor and on my shirt. So
absolutely,
if you're looking for a glass, you should definitely check it out.
I certainly will. I mean, we've got a wonderful beer sponsor, Engage Roads, for this podcast. We don't have a wine sponsor, so maybe we'll hit the good team up at Solitude. Yeah. Marshy is very much the wine connoisseur of this program. I'm only dipping my toe into the realm of wine. So no, we'll certainly keep an eye out for Solitude Estate. One last time, give your podcast a plug. Where can people find it? What's it called? One more time.
Yeah, it's called Never Too Late, and it's on Instagram. Oh, sorry, on Instagram. Yeah, I've got a page on Instagram, and then it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a few other podcast platforms. But if you just search up Never Too Late or Never Too Late with Blake, you'll be able to find it there. And I've put out 5 or 6 episodes, and hopefully a few more to come soon. So yeah, hopefully you guys can have a listen and enjoy that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If to all of our people and fans listening out there, definitely get around Blake's podcast, mate. It's been a lot of fun to have a chat to you about your career. Obviously, a few challenges along the way over the past couple of years, and hopefully this is just the beginning of your journey now. And we wish you the very best of luck for the remainder of the Aussie season, and obviously over in India as well, which would be fantastic to watch you on the international stage. But we look forward to seeing you achieve some really good things this year. So thanks very much for jumping on the 19th tee and having a chat to us.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me. It was great to have a chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you.